Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining 5 o'clock somewhere. This is our Monsanto Smack Down. We have the wonderful David Bridges on the side of Monsanto.
I'm not on the side of anyone. I'm just giving a more balanced approach because I had a very strong feeling that this would be a group of folks, including probably much of the audience, that would be speaking from the way they feel rather than from facts.
And we have Christopher Lund, who is host of the show on ToutSuite called Truth, and you've done a really amazing show on the Farm Bill, so we're going to get into that in a little bit. And Hunter Boone, who's an advocate of all good things. And Jim Gerritson is joining us live from Maine on webcam. And Maine has some interesting capabilities with bandwidth, so he's going to be joining us by phone and on video. So welcome to 5 o'clock somewhere, the Monsanto Smackdown, and we always drink on this show.
Oh, yes.
Here's something. Cheers, everybody.
Situational drinking in the higher-ups of professionalism.
Now, I want to let you know, this is a live and interactive show, so you can join us by tweeting at ToutSocial or at 5 o'clock. And we will be taking your tweets and inserting them into the show. You can also join on camera by going to ToutSuite.com, choosing the event page, Monsanto Smackdown, and click Join on Camera, and you'll be sitting right next to Jim here. So let's get started. So this controversy, I have some notes of my own.
Nice, excellent.
And I will read them because this is a heavy deal here.
Give us a little B minor.
So the key controversies of the GMO arguments are risk of harm from GMO food, whether GMO food should be labeled, the role of government regulators, the effect of GMO crops on the environment, the impact of GMO crops on farmers, including farmers in developing countries, and the role of GMO crops in feeding the growing world population. And I think that for me, the biggest issue that strikes my heart is corporate control of agriculture based on genetically modified foods. So I want to give us that as our boundaries tonight.
Do we have a safe word today, Susan?
Yeah, we have a mute button. I have a mute button.
Yellow light.
We crossed into some weird boundaries. Just let me know.
So
Pineapple.
We will mute this side and give Jim the floor. And I think that Dave Murphy is attempting to log in right now, and he is the founder of Food Democracy Now! So we're excited to have Dave come in. He's moving today. Lives in Iowa. He's had a big moving day, probably with wife and family and stuff like that.
Is he trying to stay one step ahead of Monsanto the whole time? Are they after him? Is this a fight or flight or what's going on?
I don't know. He said, "Oh yeah, I'll be there," and if he isn't, we're gonna do another show.
Nice.
So let's get right to Jim. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
It's good to see you. We're doing great. So can you give us kind of our calling list of what is your mission and what is your history in the GMO battle?
Well, our family farms in northern Maine. We've been farming 37 years, and our primary crop is raising organic seed potatoes. In addition to that, we raise other seed crops like grain, corn, and vegetable seed. And we have a mail order business called Prairie Farm, and we market direct to our customers, which are both market gardeners and home gardeners. And anyway, that's how we make our living. We're in the very northern part of Maine. It's very isolated. Our internet service is not that great. We're about 150 miles north of Bangor, Maine, 6 miles from the Canadian border. In addition to farming, I'm president of the national trade group called Organic Seed Growers and Trade Association. And we founded this organization 6 years ago. And it is the trade organization that looks after the interests of the organic seed community. And the different elements in that seed community are the organic seed farmers that raise the seed, the organic seed companies that buy and then sell the seed, and then organic seed breeders that help improve the selections that are available. And then we have a pretty good range of organizations and individuals that believe in the value of organic seed, and they're in the organization to help promote our interest. And the goal within the organization, the mission, is to develop, to protect, and to promote the organic seed trade. So
you're a for-profit business, Jim?
Our farm is designed to be a for-profit business. Yes.
God bless you.
Yes.
God bless you. God bless America.
Right.
Yes. And the organization is an agricultural nonprofit cooperative. It is not designed to make business. It's designed to further the goals of the organization, and that's largely to help develop the organic seed trade, to protect the organic seed trade, and also to promote the organic seed trade.
Sure. Further enhance the financial betterment of the organic farmers. And I salute that. Great work.
Jim, can you quickly synopsize the dilemma you've been through with Monsanto and the court?
Yes. 2 years ago, in March of 2011, we became lead plaintiff in a major federal lawsuit against Monsanto, and the name of that lawsuit is Organic Seed Growers and Trade Association et al. V. Monsanto. It's a very large plaintiff group of 83 plaintiffs comprised of individual family farmers, independent seed companies, and agricultural organizations, including Food Democracy Now!, Dave Murphy's group. And if you take the combined memberships of all the plaintiffs, we have over 300,000 citizens in the plaintiff group, and that includes about 25% of all certified organic farmers in the U.S. and Canada. So this lawsuit was filed in federal court in Manhattan under the Declaratory Judgment Act, and what we are seeking is court protection from Monsanto, so that should Monsanto's patented transgenic gene technology trespass onto our farms and contaminate our crops, that we would be protected by the court, so that we would not have to defend ourselves from claims of patent infringement
Huge.
With that contamination.
It's their number one way of pressuring farmers to get on board with them is by the litigation of the blowover, so to speak.
Well, Monsanto is one of the most aggressive enforcers of patents in the world, and the fact is, in the last 15 years or so, they have pursued 844 farmers for patent infringement, collecting over $24 million from those farmers. What's extraordinary is that usually patent infringement lawsuits are between competing companies. What is extraordinary is that Monsanto sues its own customers, farmers, in order to maintain this, what I consider a discipline and a atmosphere of intimidation against farmers.
And so real quickly, can you take us through the legislative process that you've been through over the years, from the local courts, the appellate courts, to the Supreme Court, real quickly?
And where does it stand now?
Well, the case right now, we're expecting an imminent ruling any day now from the Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. The way Monsanto takes these cases on is they delay them as long as they can. Historically, their opponents run out of resources, and that's been an effective strategy. Early on in the process, in July of 2011, Monsanto filed a motion to dismiss our case. Again, a typical pretrial motion.
Hey, Jim, just from my own experience, 2 or 3 years of litigation, having spent 5 years getting divorced, doesn't seem like that long, particularly when battling a giant company like Monsanto. So let's compare. You know, litigation seems to drag on forever for everyone. If you've ever been in a car accident and or tried to fight a traffic ticket. So I'm inclined to think that the idea of 3 years of litigation against some giant company with 83 plaintiffs doesn't seem that long of a period.
we've anticipated that this lawsuit will take 3 to 5 years. So we're in it for the long haul. It would go quicker if Monsanto would drop their shenanigans of trying to keep this case from getting to trial. You know, the fact is, the farmers in this plaintiff group are classic examples of what Congress was trying to protect when it passed the Declaratory Judgment Act approximately 30 years ago. We feel that we are at legal jeopardy of being accused of patent infringement when the fact is we want nothing to do with Monsanto. But U.S. patent law is very absolute. The patent owner has absolute patent rights. No one besides the patent owner has a right to possess patented material unless they have signed a licensing agreement. One of the things that our plaintiffs have in common is that we are not customers of Monsanto. We have never signed licensing agreements because we want nothing to do with them. If we are in possession of their technology, not having signed those licensing agreements, we are at legal jeopardy of being accused of patent infringement. Patent law doesn't concern itself whether you have intention of possession or even knowledge of intention. If you possess patented material without having permission in the form of a licensing agreement, you are at legal jeopardy for being sued for patent infringement. And again, Monsanto has 844 times in the last 15 years or so gone after farmers. We think that it's a reasonable concern that we have that should we become contaminated, Monsanto will go after us. And in fact, our lawyers, after the court proceedings began, our lawyers asked Monsanto for a binding legal covenant which would guarantee that they would not sue us if they contaminated us, and Monsanto refused to provide that to us.
Hey, Jim, are you thankful that California's Proposition 37 went down in flames? Because farmers just like yourself here would have been harmed by that very law of unintended consequence. So
I don't believe that myself. In fact, here in the state of Maine, we are trying to pass a GMO labeling bill along many of the same lines that Prop 37 is. I think that transparency is good in a democracy. I think that any company that I've ever run into besides the biotech industry, they are proud of their products and they want their customers to know that their products are out there. It's extraordinary that Monsanto and the other biotech companies want the public to not know that their products are being made into the food that they find in the grocery stores.
I thank you, Jim. We're going to get back to that in just a second. I just want to say hi to Dave Murphy.
Hi, Dave.
How you doing? Thank you.
Hi, buddy.
Hi, Dave. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yeah.
How are you?
Excellent. We're so glad you could join us. I know you're moving today, and you have a lot going on. We have Jim Gerritson, Christopher Lund, David Bridges, Hunter Boone, and I'm Susan Quinn, and it's great to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you guys. Thanks for having me on.
I think the idea that we've come on to is Monsanto is bad because they're giant and are trying to protect their self-interest.
Sure.
And they're bad because of that. I think that, you know, the bigger picture is without genetically. I think my understanding was the discussion was going to be about genetically modified foods and their place in taking care of the human needs that couldn't be sustained by organic farming alone. And that it's just.
Well, it's that plus the aspect of has this been researched, and does it have health effects, and does it protect the local farmer who does want to create their own organic?
Susan, can I back up and ask Dave a quick question here? The statement that you just slipped in there, are you promoting that somehow Monsanto genetically modified seeds are a way to increase crop yields?
Okay,
is that the strategy, would you say, that they're employing? Is that why Monsanto is even an issue?
That's why Monsanto is hugely successful.
Really?
Because farming, by its very nature, is a profit-driven business.
Yes, it is.
So when they tried to stop the Monsanto developed, I believe it was corn or wheat in Argentina, the folks or in Brazil, they ran across the border. The farmers run across the border and get the genetically modified seed and bring it back over because they could farm with fewer pesticides. They could farm with less hands-on, and the crops themselves were heavier.
So right now, Christopher, response, and then we'll go to Dave.
No, there's a fascinating book out there called Failure to Yield. You've got to read this thing. And basically what it says is, I dare Monsanto to prove that anything is increasing yields, because the bottom line is it's not.
Well, hold on. There's a million farmers out there that as a business model, this is what they do for a living. They don't just sit and write books about how Monsanto's the devil.
So now that you know the lay of the land, Dave and Jim, hearing that thought, this is what we're dealing with. So what do you think? Dave, let's start with you.
Yeah, it sounds like your friend has read all the latest talking points from Monsanto. And in fact, they smuggle those seeds in illegally. And, listen, all farmers know that, and plant pathologists say basically that the act of inserting the gene makes the yields go down. There have been 20 years of studies that show that genetic engineering alone does not increase yields.
Then why would they do it?
Why do people, take pharmaceuticals and advertise on TV? Because there's a lot of advertising dollars, millions of dollars of advertising money pumped into convincing them that these are the best way to increase yields. But it's not true. And Jim knows that as an organic farmer. But here, I'm in Iowa, and that's been a common myth for 20 years, that genetic engineering increases yields. But it's not true. You mentioned Union of Concerned Scientists did a really important study, failure to yield. It was a follow-up from a 1998 study or 1999 study from Chuck Benbrook that showed even a few years after the first genetically engineered soybeans were planted in 1996, all the studies showed that there was no increase in yield. And the hilarious thing is the USDA just released a study in the last 2 months, a 20-year side-by-side comparison study in Wisconsin that showed that crops that are genetically engineered planted next to their organic and conventional seeds do not yield higher yields. In fact, they're lower. So farmers in the Midwest are starting to understand this. I'm sure you've heard of Dr. Huber, who's a plant pathologist, formerly of Purdue University, who's talked about a rise of crop diseases here in the Midwest. Soybeans, it's sudden death in soybeans, and Goss's wilt in corn, that has massively decreased yields for farmers. But listen, it's a great talking point for Monsanto and people that believe that, but it just hasn't borne fruit in farmers' fields. And I think Jim would be a good person to follow up on that.
Well, I want to touch on one. Can I touch on one point though? Because it's not a talking point from Monsanto. I just went to the University of California at Davis, which is a pretty well-known agricultural school, and they said the genetic engineering.
Very pro-biotech, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm a realtor. I'm a realtor, and all I know is that there are farmers, and there are laws of unintended.
Have you ever heard of the housing bubble? Have you ever heard of a housing bubble? The mortgage crash?
Hey, brother, I lived through it. So
yeah, I'm sure, and farmers are living through a yield crash with GMO crops. Yeah. So I'm sure universities say a lot of things because that's where they get their funding, from biotech companies. Organic farmers don't fund, ag state universities, and it's a shame. But I think Jim would have some good answers on the yield question. I mean, he's a seed grower and organic farmer.
Yeah, Jim, can you speak to that?
Yes, Dave is correct. The Union of Concerned Scientists study proved that yields are not higher under GMO. In fact, they're lower. And this is just part of the talking points, part of the propaganda that Monsanto and the other biotech companies put out, where there has been shown to be a strong yield on corn. The attribution is to the genetics behind the corn, not to the genetically engineered traits that have been stacked onto that corn. And it's been a travesty here that the Antitrust Division at the U.S. Department of Justice has allowed Monsanto to be on a buying spree And in the last 15 years, they bought up many of the formerly independent seed companies in the American Midwest, and in doing so, they have gained control of the highest quality corn genetics in the world. And now, in order for a farmer to have access to purchase those corn genetics, they are forced to buy seed controlled by Monsanto that has been stacked with up to 9 different genetically engineered traits, and the farmers are paying a premium on each and every trait, even if they want to have simply the basic genetics. They have to pay the premium to get the traits, whether they want it or not. And many farmers now are reporting that when they go to their local seed dealer, the only seed that is being offered and available to them is genetically engineered seed. And this is because Monsanto is controlling, in the case of sugar beets, 95% of the sugar beets is controlled by Monsanto. In the case of corn, 85, 88%, canola, cotton, over 90%. So really, Monsanto has become such a large monopoly, they have taken over the availability of choice to farmers. Now,
so
somebody mentioned earlier, they asked, why is Monsanto getting into this if it's not to increase yield? The reason is that Monsanto is a chemical company, and the genetically engineered applications that they have come up with are designed to get farmers onto a treadmill of having to buy chemicals from Monsanto. And the licensing agreements require the farmers, to buy their chemicals, say glyphosate or Roundup, from Monsanto.
Right, because it's not just the seed. Now you need all the complexities that go along with it. Yeah.
And Jim and Dave, another thing that kind of comes from this is that if we're talking about BT corn and that becomes feed corn, that we're seeing examples of that in human bodies as well as in the livestock. So it's not just in the corn; it's now taking another, ramification in human bodies and then in the animals that are receiving that feed.
What's the ramification?
We're getting that in our body.
I was at a conference 16 years ago at a USDA conference. I was invited as a stakeholder. Union of Concerned Scientists brought in some organic farmers from across the country, and GMO potatoes were one of the first crops, and that's our primary crop. So I was brought in as someone knowledgeable about potatoes. At that conference, there were Monsanto employees that swore up and down 2 things. One is that they had tweaked the concentration of bacterial poison in their gene-spliced potatoes, corn, and cotton so high that there was no way that an insect could possibly develop resistance. And we knew that was incorrect because that was a misrepresentation of how resistance develops. The other thing they said is there is no mammalian toxicity of these transgenic forms of BT. Well, 2 years ago, scientists in Sherbrooke, Quebec, found that when they checked pregnant women and their fetuses, that over 80% of these women and their fetuses had BT within their systems. And since the attribution has to be transgenic BT, so somewhere humans are now ingesting transgenic BT and getting this into their system, where we had been assured that there was no possibility of that happening. And at the same time, these transgenic BT crops are now failing because of developed insect resistance, including corn rootworm in the upper Midwest. Again, we were lied to and told that this would never happen. So what we've come to learn is that anything that Monsanto says is something you want to be skeptical of, because they don't tell the truth very often.
And if I can take it one step further, it seems as if the BT corn is killing the flora in our stomachs, that we are changing as people, and then you can add the whole additional layer of the pharmaceutical companies who are coming in to deal with that. I know that takes it to a whole nother level.
Oh yeah, man. Let's see. Let's start the whole shut up the fear flag.
Real quickly, I want to see if Dave, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing?
Awesome. Your video froze a little bit, so but we want to have your weigh in on that, actually.
Well, too, yeah, real quickly, the Bt toxin that's inserted into a crop, whether it's corn or cotton, and, one, it's failing in farmers' fields. That's the bigger concern. I mean, there's two things that are happening. One, they're inserting Bt, which is Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a common soil-borne bacteria, and it actually naturally kills insects. Organic farmers actually use it as a beneficial organic pesticide, and it kills insects. But what Monsanto has done, and the biotech companies, they've taken that same organism or bacteria, and they've inserted it into a foreign gene into living cells of corn and cotton and potatoes. At this point, that makes every cell of that plant basically a living pesticide or a living insecticide. And I think the EPA has Bt corn registered as an insecticide. So what happens is it goes into an insect. It's really bred for a European corn borer for corn here in the Midwest, and it eats holes in their stomach lining, and they die because their stomach explodes. That's not a pretty way to die as an insect. Humans are obviously a lot larger. The question is, in 2011, Jim mentioned the study in Canada, which showed an alarming fact that the Bt toxin was now in the bloodstream of 90% of this Canadian women, the pregnant women in this Canadian study. It was also in the umbilical cord fluid blood of 83% of these children, unborn.
We might have lost. There he is. Keep
That's
going.
alarming news. But what does that do to humans?
That was Monsanto that just shut you off.
Yeah, exactly. We know how they are.
Talk faster, Dave. They're going to buy our network in about 10 seconds, man.
But, the real question is, why is the U.S. government not investigating potential harm from these products? Why do they only allow corporate science from the corporation that stands to benefit profit-wise to submit that science? And basically, it's a rubber stamp process. It's the illusion of regulation, just like we have the illusion of regulation in our financial markets.
It's absolutely an illusion, and I'm a believer again. I am a believer in the free market. You recall the whole Alar scare of 20 years ago? Alar was 60 Minutes did a big episode on Alar, and it was sprayed onto apples, and it made the apples prettier. And they said that Alar caused these tumors in a specific type of rat. Well, the specific type of rat also developed tumors with or without the Alar. It turned out the whole thing. I mean, moms were pouring apple juice out. Well, hold on. Let me finish. No, I'm not. I'm speaking to the point.
Tangent.
I'm speaking to the point.
Yeah, let him speak to the point. This is
okay.
They claim that these chemicals were killed kids, and there was this huge outcry, and so lots of people believed it, and because this whole idea of fear sells. So schools across America started banning apples, and people stopped eating apples, and what turned out is a bunch of kids stopped eating apples and the Alar thing turned out to be bunk. And
that's why we have the obesity epidemic today, because kids aren't eating their apples.
Thank you, Dave. You solved it.
That's what's going on.
But you know what it did? It sold $185 million a year in newsletters for this whole Alar scare. So scare sells. And this whole Monsanto thing.
Last time an apple farmer got a government subsidy to grow apples, though, man.
To not grow apples.
Really quickly, I do want to take this Twitter question because people are watching us live right now, and we have a question.
The Samsung 4 to the best Twitter question of the evening.
Tweet. Yeah. Sponsorship moment. The tweet is, I'd be curious if anyone on the panel are against GMO crops or just against Monsanto practices. And that would include everybody here.
It's really funny. I think the word against is what I'm going to latch on to, because I don't know that necessarily we're here to talk about being against anything. I think what we're really here trying to talk about is, can you just give me the facts? Stop treating me like a child, like somehow you know better than me, and you're only going to tell me a little part of the truth because somehow I can't handle the reality. The fact that you're spending millions of dollars hiding your footprints in the sand, rather than celebrating all these achievements that you defend in court, why are you not out there promoting this? why are we being treated as these kind of like ignorant little children that shouldn't be given this kind of responsibility to make a decision on our own? Like, where does this come from? I mean, is it easier to funnel feed me than it is to let me make my own choices? That's the part I guess I don't see where it's coming from.
And now we're going to go to Dave, because Dave has to go. So, Dave, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, listen, what I'm pro-farmer, and I'm pro-environment, and I'm pro-democracy. Food democracy, now democracy is our middle name. We fundamentally believe that corporations don't have a right to write the rules and regulations behind closed doors that govern their products. I mean, that's a belief we have, but we know that that's how it's done. In just last month, the entire planet and entire population of the United States was shown how Monsanto operates. They snuck an entirely unnecessary provision into a must-pass spending bill to guarantee their profits under a review of a lawsuit. Now, it only lasts 6 months, but the fact is, at Food Democracy Now, I'm in Iowa. I know how industrial agricultural plays the game. I've been a lobbyist in the Iowa State Capitol. So they passed this legislation in something, or this provision in something that would only last 6 months. But it gives the illusion of, that it's that it's a good thing. Already, Section 735 from H.R. 933 is being used in Oregon and other states to justify state legislators trying to steal local control of agriculture and seed production in Oregon and in Missouri. Now, the real question is, what am I for? I've investigated, biotechnology or genetically engineered crops for 10 years. I think as it is currently conducted right now, it's based on flawed scientific principles. It's junk science. It's cigarette science masquerading as true science. And there's harm to family farmers through the lawsuits and through genetic contamination of their crops. There's harm to our basic democratic process by the way in which this corporation, Monsanto, and the other chemical companies buy political influence in Washington, D.C.
Okay, Dave, listen, hold on, listen, he's got to get his own channel, he's going to run his own. Hey, Dave, how about this? Don't you think it's a bigger issue that our government and our elected officials are beholden to these guys? You shouldn't be upset about a Monsanto who are just trying to protect their interests.
That's outrageous. Companies do not have a right to poison us because they want profits. And if they want to have their products in the marketplace, they need to conduct real science. And they need to put a label on their products.
Listen, I spent over an hour today investigating this stuff, so I'm pretty.
Congratulations!
Dave, here's a question for you, since you're the sounding board today. So you feel deep in your heart that a company like Monsanto, with all the material,
there's no way I'm going to defend Monsanto.
No, I'm not asking you to. What I'm saying is in your mind, are you saying that a company like Monsanto, with the information that it produces, the seeds, the Roundup Ready, the chemical connection, the fact that you're going to need nitrate-heavy petroleum-based fertilizer to get anything to grow on these chemistry-intensive crops, are you saying that they have nutrition in your best interest at heart and not profit?
I would absolutely.
Their job is a hold on. Which Dave?
Let's hear from Dave.
Which Dave were you asking?
Both of you.
All right.
Their job is
You're going to be here all night.
Okay.
I'd like to hear him first. I'll stay on extra for this one.
Okay.
Oh, I'm just saying that their job as a company is their financial bottom line.
Yes.
End of story.
Yes.
Now, where I would be pissed off, and you guys are rightfully pissed off, is that they push something through on some freaking fat-laced bill.
It's a spending bill. It's a must-pass spending bill.
Monsanto got protected by a spending bill.
I know.
That's where you should be pissed off. Come on. And
don't limit me to specific areas of a bill.
No, you're allowed to be pissed off about anything. The other thing is, being a farmer is hard frickin' work. It starts early, it ends late, and I'll tell you what, if everything that we eat, be it steak, corn, grain, every piece of pasta we eat is genetically modified, but there's good in genetic modification. I didn't realize this was a whole, I should have guessed it was a Monsanto slam.
That's
SmackDown.
So listen, I agree that they've got undue influence with our freaking with the people that we pay to do our to look out for us. So that's where my anger lies.
Sure.
But
and
as far as being
where this show originated from was the day that Obama signed that secretive law.
What's it called? The Monsanto provision.
Wait, who did that?
Monsanto Protection
It's
Act.
called something totally different.
Yeah.
The what?
Tell us why it's called the Monsanto Protection Act. Oh,
It's Section 735, which they're calling the Farmer Assurance Provision. And Roy Blunt, who's a senator from Missouri, who is a Republican, admitted that at this time around, he slipped it into the continuing resolution in December and the January in the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. So, but the fact is, Food Democracy Now! And the Center for Food Safety and other groups, Food and Water Watch and other groups have been trying to stop this since June of 2012. So we've known about it, and we know how Monsanto works. And the question is, listen, we're not just our outrage over the violation of our basic democratic rights is not limited to this small provision. It is how they treat and bully farmers. It's how they have genetic contamination of organic and conventional crops. And the other thing is, for 20 years, they've denied the American public the right to know what's in their food. All we want is a label, a simple label that says this food's been genetically engineered. What do they do?
I absolutely agree with that.
No.
What went on here in California is they had a zero tolerance on Proposition 37 for any overblow could cost an individual farmer who's just freaking trying to eke out a living, could have put them under. Could have put under any small.
That's absolutely false. That's not true.
No,
I was
it is.
the co-chair of that
It
campaign.
is true.
It's not true at all.
Let him talk.
Listen, you don't have your facts right. Okay, that's just Monsanto propaganda.
No, it's
thing
listen, my girlfriend is a farmer.
Let him speak.
I was the co-chair of the campaign. I know the facts. There were no penalties for farmers. Okay, and there were no penalties for businesses. All they would have done, they gave them 18 months to comply, and then they gave them, if someone came in and complained to the store, they thought that this product was genetically engineered or maybe genetically engineered, and it wasn't labeled, they gave them 30 days to comply. So we actually made it very easy for farmers to comply with, and we made it easy for the business to comply with. Now, the fact is, Monsanto spent $8.1 million of their own money that they took from farmers, from their technology fees, and then they piled up a total of $46.5 million to deceive the California public. And it's very clear from your statement that they succeeded. But here's the thing. I want Jim to talk about, as a farmer, why he's concerned about a corporation like Monsanto and what it means to him as a farmer and the ability to pass down his organic farm to his children and to his grandchildren.
Yeah.
Those are really important.
And also, Jim, just really quickly, if I can insert this tweet question, it might be able to wrap this into your answer. From Anonymous Wino is asking, why do we think that the U.S. government has more desire to support GMO rather than organic processes? So.
Well, the proof's in the pudding. The Obama administration has been the most supportive administration in American history of GMO crops, even more so than the Bush administration, which was very strongly inclined. Part of the failure is that our regulatory system is dysfunctional. The regulators at USDA, APHIS, are a revolving door supply from the biotech industry. There's an inherent financial conflict of interest when people with strong, deep backgrounds in the biotech industry come to work in the federal government for a short amount of time, whether it be the USDA or the FDA, and they make decisions that are very comfortable for the friends that they leave in the biotech industry. Then after staying some number of years in the federal government, they head back to their careers in the biotech industry. The problem is these regulators should be representing the public interest, and the reality is they are representing the private interest of the biotech corporations, and the American public's interest is not being represented. Part of the problem, the lack of studies in this country on which to base an opinion, they're few and far between, because U.S. patent law requires that researchers get a licensing agreement from the patent holder in order to conduct the research. This is not the case in foreign countries. In foreign countries, it's common that their patent law allows an exemption so that their researchers can conduct research which unimpeded research that the nation can then learn from. So that's why we're finding this research coming out in European countries and not in the United States.
So Jim, what you're telling me is that it's technically, legally impossible for us as an American to do any kind of experimentation on these GMO crops because Monsanto will not release them for research.
Well,
is that a fair
not only
statement?
does Monsanto's licensing agreements prevent farmers from saving their own seed and replanting it, they prevent farmers from supplying seed to researchers. So the researchers have no way to get seed except to go to Monsanto themselves. And my understanding is that the licensing agreement that researchers would have to sign are stifle academic freedom in that Monsanto reserves the right to review the research results and to determine whether those results will be made public or not.
Hey, Jim, I thought academia was in the pocket of Monsanto. Didn't we just hear that a moment ago?
Somebody brought up early on tonight, UC at Davis. I think that it's important to understand how much money Monsanto gives to land-grant universities from California to Maine. This is how they play the game. They buy the favor of scientists at our land-grant universities because they fund their research. And the scientists who are typically inadequately funded by the state governments, they look upon this and become reliant upon this, and they are not going to bite the hand that feeds them.
Yeah, just like they buy our politicians.
Yeah. Hey, it's good business.
Clearly.
You know?
If 90% of the American people are for labeling GMOs, why isn't it passing if they haven't bought off our politicians, like clearly?
Because there's a complete disconnect between the actual representation of your political leaders. I mean that simply hasn't happened in 25 years. I mean, the connection is
public support to the labeling of GMOs, and I think that's kind of, let's get back to the simplicity of, our topic tonight, which is amazing to have you guys on and to really hear a lot of the background about what we're hearing firsthand.
I think you have to look at a bigger issue, though, and let's, again, I'm trying to play as along the fence as I can. I don't want to turn it into strictly Monsanto's the evil empire. That'd be too easy today, because that's easy to discount. But my curiosity is that these companies like Monsanto, when it comes to a population, like if I ran a grocery store in this neighborhood, and I was serving things out of my grocery store that was making my neighborhood sick, okay, my business wouldn't last very long. There has to be a self-interest at some point.
Absolutely.
When you get to the size of a company that Monsanto and now its best friend in Europe, Bayer company, banded together, you're looking at 40,000, 50,000 employees.
You're talking about Bayer aspirin.
I am.
Bayer is bigger than,
and they're making seeds, and
They are, and they're also a big provider of pharmaceuticals. You start tying these two together. But my point is these companies with that many employees, I mean, they're represented in 120 countries. Yeah. I mean, they're closing in on $20 billion a year in just their agricultural products alone. They don't answer to us as a population. They don't answer us to a group of politicians. Our group of laws that protect us as a country are not a concern to them. It's a financial cost of doing business to still ramrod what they're going to do home anyway. I'm not saying as a company that we should lambaste them. What I'm saying is you've got all this money and all these resources. Do you think you could focus on something that was maybe a touch better for us as a population? Or is it really that profitable to lie to us? I mean, that's the part where I can't see the connection.
So you're thinking they made their profit based on the death of people?
Absolutely.
No, they've made their profit. No, they've made their profit by being successful in what they're doing.
What's more profitable, to cure a disease or to treat it?
Well, to treat it, of course.
Thank you very much.
What if you create it and treat it?
Yeah,
Now you've got two sources of revenue
my
stream.
Lord, here come the black helicopters right now.
Are they all connected?
Oh, well, yes, and
They're coming after you.
Halliburton,
Are they all connected? I mean, how much of the what do they give you? Antibiotics. What about the antibiotic issues, man? Are you connected to that at all? Have you done any homework on what that's done to the food chain supply? The fact that your body has almost no ability to fight off disease naturally anymore because of all the antibiotics they feed into the industry to get them to your doorstep?
Just to be clear, it's going to happen to the farmers. They're not going to be able to protect their own crops. They're going to have to buy the Monsanto products to protect their crops because the Monsanto genes are in there.
Well, listen. Monsanto was, and listen. I agree that this big behemoth is taking control of our.
I think Dave wants to speak. I can hear him.
Listen, I want to speak too. So
okay,
this big,
I know Dave Murphy has to go.
Dave Murphy, please. I'll leave here in a moment.
Dave, go. Dave,
before you leave, you're gonna have to send me one of those orange shirts so Monsanto.
Yeah, it's San Francisco Giants. Go Giants. San Francisco Giants. Orange out Friday. Every Friday.
Excuse me, Dave. That is the World
Series. That's a good looking
shirt.
I like it.
World Series champion.
All right, off topic.
Sure.
Yes.
What was there a question?
No. Susan thought it was important that you address something now.
Well, listen. I appreciate the conversation. The question is really, what are these companies doing to our food supply? And as the citizens of this country, what is our response? What are we going to do to take back our food supply? The fact is, for 50 years we focused on a cheap food supply policy, and what has that done for us? It's driven millions of farmers off the land, and it's created the largest obesity epidemic in the history of the planet. 30% of our children have type 2 diabetes or overweight or obese. It's appalling. It's because our elected officials do the bidding of these corporations. Now, we focus on Monsanto and genetically engineered seeds and because we want labeling of this product. I'm here based in Iowa, and I also know the real threat that this corporation poses to the independent control of seed supply. It is a massive monopoly that Monsanto now owns on our genetics. It's like a new pharaoh controlling all the food that we eat. The question is, in a democracy, what are our rights, and how do we gain them back? In my belief, at Food Democracy Now!, we believe labeling is a first step. It's a very fundamental and easy way to regain control of our democratic rights in terms of how our food is produced. And at the same time, we're in a lawsuit against Monsanto with Jim, because we believe that organic and conventional farmers, the best farmers that America has, they deserve to be protected in the marketplace. And Monsanto has intentionally produced a flawed product, a genetically engineered seed, whose GMO pollen blows across the fence and it contaminates the farmer's field. It's an outrage that that's even allowed to happen in the United States, and that corporation doesn't have to pay the cleanup cost and compensate the farmer for their genetic pollution. But I guess that, you're going to say Monsanto's not the bad guy, or Monsanto's a brilliant agribusiness corporation, which they are very successful. That's true. But there are also a lot of negative impacts that they have on family farmers, on our environment, and for me, fundamentally for democracy. So that's why Food Democracy Now!, we're going to fight them every level until we get labeling of genetically engineered foods. We think
Susan, please let me know when I can ask a question.
Let's wait just a second. Okay. I know we have to let Dave go, and we can go as long as we want, because this is too sweet. And
I have a question about labeling, which Dave said he sat on the board of the Prop 37 labeling.
I definitely want to talk about a couple of different issues that we haven't really touched on tonight, and that is the opinion of scientists. So you hear some of the opposition saying things like, this is part of the fear campaign waged by the multi-billion-dollar organic food industry. And then we hear scientists that you hear the story that scientists are pro-GMO. But then you've got Martha Herbert, MD of Harvard University School of Medicine, and many others that say, as a medical doctor, I can assure you that no one in the medical profession would attempt to perform experiments on human subjects without their consent. Such conduct is illegal and unethical, yet manufacturers of genetically altered foods are exposing us to the largest uncontrolled experiment in modern history. And so let's touch on a little bit of the science. And let's touch on the things that the opposition is saying.
Oh, can somebody tell me why they started modifying it in the first place? Like, was there something imperfect about it, Jim? Like,
yes. You know why?
The one thing you need to understand, genetic engineering is all about control. That it's not about saving
Jim,
the world. It's not about feeding the hungry masses.
Jim, isn't every potato that you grow genetically modified? Every potato you grow is genetically modified in some way, naturally. Through you've picked out the weak potatoes, and how long have you been a potato grower?
That's natural selection, not genetic modification.
No, believe me. A fellow by the name of Mendel started this with peas back in the 1880s.
Yes, the original genetic experimentation with plant species.
A potato farmer worth his salt is going to take the hardiest and best growing potatoes, and those are the seeds that he sells.
Yes.
I'm a seed farmer, and what seed farmers refer to is genetic selection. It's only Monsanto that refers to genetic modification because they are trying to confuse the public, trying to make us believe that the genetic engineering that they conduct in laboratories is no different than what has gone on by farmers for thousands of years, and it's totally false. We talk of genetic selection. That's how we do breeding. That's how we do improvement. That's been going on for 10,000 years. The fact is that what Monsanto is doing is human genetic engineering, and it has nothing at all to do with what farmers have been doing for thousands of years. Monsanto is taking genetic material from dissimilar genera. For example, in one application, they took the genes from a flounder fish and gene spliced it into a strawberry in order to give the strawberry frost resistance. If you sat a strawberry and a flounder in a room for 1,000,000 years, you would never get a frost.
Hey, you know what? But there is a video you can watch. The sadder part is
completely false.
The sadder part is that the folks, the American public, they want beautiful fruit. They want beautiful strawberries. They want beautiful apples. Yes.
Oh yeah, they do.
Yes.
Like strawberries, not like fish.
No, they don't. No one knows what anything good tastes like.
Why not?
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Don't tell us what people want. 90% don't want to eat genetically modified foods without knowing it.
Why are farmers markets growing at the largest rate they've ever seen? Because people are like, oh, that's what a strawberry tastes like. Not that weird green thing in the grocery. It's like, this is a strawberry that was grown by an organic guy that's like picked, ready to eat, not ready to transport 5,000 miles across the planet.
You know, like us. I'm 45. I remember what a peach tastes like off a tree, and I can't buy that even at Whole Foods sometimes.
Well, farmers markets, what are they doing? You think they're all organic and not
absolutely
and non genetically modified, really?
Absolutely.
Well, we're talking about 20 years ago when Gracie back there was a baby. I read a book called The Epitaph for a Peach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this was about the end of American. I mean, this was 20 years ago, and it was sort of a novel about a man's organic, or just a farm. I guess they were all organic back then.
No.
Well, it was his family farm, and the taste of peach and the way it used to give you like peach fuzz and like hurt your chin when you were taking a bite of big juicy peach. How many times have you had that experience?
When was the last time you saw liquid in a peach in a grocery store, man? Because it bruises. It doesn't look pretty.
No, that's why I'm saying the public won't buy them.
Apparently, if I crossbreed Bo Jackson with a peach, then it not only won't bruise, but it can throw itself like 400 yards on a pill,
Listen,
it doesn't sound like a good idea.
Where does it stop? Where do you improve the tomato? How far do you take it?
I think we ought to go back to composting our own feces and growing all of our own vegetables in our backyards. But that's not where we're.
Once we like strip the venison on the abandoned highway, is that where you're going?
Let's go back to Jim. I think Dave had to go. Dave, are you there?
Dave's on.
Dave had to go. So Jim, let's carry on.
Shut up. You had to keep moving, man.
So do you guys have any further questions about the science? what is science actually saying about this? Because you have the paper.
Actually, let's ask Jim.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of like research, like scientific research, which I think is the toughest piece of information to possess in America, because so much of it is like there's actually, you can be a major in statistics and probability. I can take any piece of information and modify it according to the view or the issue that I want to come across. So for you as a gentleman that's been in court, like who do you go to for your truth? Like, where do you get your facts from where you can actually like have some faith in them?
Well, we are required to do our homework and to educate ourselves. We know that, we have a media that is controlled by special interests that have a certain viewpoint that they want out there. So I would say thank God for the Internet. The Internet allows us to gain access to information beyond the U.S. borders. Maybe you were familiar with last September, the Gerritson group in France, led by Dr. Cirolini, came up with some powerful research. They had conducted studies on one type of Monsanto corn, MON 810, and glyphosate or Roundup in a 2-year-long study with rats. The protocols that these scientists adopted were exactly the same as what the biotech companies themselves do, but here's what's different. When the biotech companies do their research and turn in the data and the studies to the federal government in the United States for the federal government to make their decisions about deregulating the crops, they conduct 90-day studies, which are pretty short studies. What Dr. Cirolini and his team found is that beginning at the 4th month, there was a significantly increased likelihood of developing cancerous tumors, both from the genetically engineered crop alone and from glyphosate alone and from the two in combination, that not only did they develop cancerous tumors, they also developed a shortened lifespan. And this study went on for 2 years. It's a tremendous study, something that has been really forwarded the understanding of what is going on. So now what has been the result? Monsanto and their henchmen are trying to get this study retracted, which is the ultimate way of discrediting a researcher.
Hey Jim, I don't want to stop this rant any more than anyone else, but I do want to talk about what the headlines don't say, is that those female Sprague Dolly rats, which are the rats that were used in that study, they usually develop tumors in 87 to 96% of the in the same timeline. It's similar stories that happen with the
that is false. That is part of the Monsanto campaign to discredit Dr. Cirolini. Look at the pattern. Dr. Huber, Dr. Donald Huber.
Again, I only did research for an hour today with University of California, University of California, San Diego.
Assassination by the biotech industry. Any scientist that dares to speak the truth and say that these GMO crops are a problem, they become the victims of character assassination by the biotech industry. That's the fact, and you've got your facts wrong, and you could go online and you can find a rebuttal to that false claim by Monsanto and their allies. Dr. Cirolini has made a good rebuttal. It's available online, and it's available for you to read.
Yeah, one of the more interesting Monsanto lawsuits that really I thought was, it was just, it didn't make any sense, but it was fascinating how much time and effort they spent on it, was they were suing dairy farmers. I love this story, I really do. They were suing dairy farmers for putting the symbol on their carton that says, this milk is from non-RBST treated cattle. Mm-hmm. Monsanto sued every dairy farmer that put that on his carton because they said by saying that these cows weren't treated with this hormone, it was suggesting that there was something wrong with that hormone. They never said it was bad. They never said not to eat it. They never said a word out of class about it. They simply wanted the freedom to say this milk does not contain that hormone.
And that's one of the aspects of this.
Monsanto sued every single one of them.
Well, listen,
every single one of them.
Why don't the people or the farmers and the producers that don't use genetically modified organisms label their food voluntarily.
But here's the thing in America. We have the power of a consumer. We can change a company's track by money. We can do that.
Whole Foods has announced that they will label all GMO products within Whole Foods within 5 years. And so
5 years? Really? 5 whole years?
Yeah.
Way to get right on the ball, Whole Foods, man.
That has taken some flack, and I really want to hear what Jim thinks about that. Is that a benefit? Is that positive moving forward, or is it a delay?
Yes, it is positive moving forward, but they should not take 5 years. They don't need 5 years.
Bingo.
They should do it in less time than that. But it is positive moving forward, and it does put, Whole Foods has, over 200 stores. It's a major chain, and this is going to be something that other chains are going to want to follow because of competitive forces. So I think it is a sign for the better, but I don't think they need 5 years to implement.
I think 5 years is the magic number because it takes that long for a company to redirect profit streams. And so they've got to figure out how to buy products where they won't be held accountable for it. So 5 years gives them a very broad window to redirect those dollars.
Look at Ben and Jerry's ice cream here in New England, in Vermont. They've said that they will phase out genetically engineered ingredients within 12 months of now. I think that's, they deserve credit for making that stance and for making the transition so quickly. My personal belief is that Whole Foods could do it in less than 5 years.
I agree.
And maybe in time there will be enough pressure on them to move that up.
So I can die from the cholesterol, healthier ice cream. That's good to know. Excellent. Good talk, man.
Jim, a quick question. Why is Europe forcing some of the U.S. companies to label GMO over there, but we won't do it here? And secondly, we don't have really a power in this country to, the American people can't seem to get that voice heard. We tried with 37 to make sure that we label those products in the U.S. like they do in Europe. What are your thoughts on that?
Do you remember who exempt? Do you remember who the three industries in
California
exempt?
The biggest benefit of Europe is that Monsanto is based in St. Louis, Missouri, and they're not based in Europe. The Europeans came up with their requirements for GMO labeling at the beginning of this technology. The European governments, I think, pay more attention to their people, and they pay less attention to concentrated political forces like Monsanto. Monsanto, they are one of the most connected organizations, corporations within the U.S. government. They are strongly connected with both the Democrats and the Republicans. In this last presidential campaign, it was reported that Monsanto gave over $2 million to Barack Obama, but they gave over $5 million to Mitt Romney. The way they play it, regardless of who gets in there, they will be in charge and they will have the ear of the president. This concept, which is behind the justification for not labeling, is a 20-year-old political concept which they call substantial equivalence. The idea, and this was invented by Michael Taylor, who was at that time a lobbyist for Monsanto. He is now the head of food safety in the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. But Michael Taylor invented this substantial equivalence concept, which is a complete fallacy, but the concept is that genetically engineered crops are substantially equivalent to traditional crops, so for that reason, they don't need to be labeled. Well, if that's the case, when Monsanto takes one product to the FDA, they claim this is substantially equivalent to a traditional crop, so we shouldn't have to label it. And then the FDA says, that makes sense, we're not going to label it. Then they take this very same invention and they go to the U.S. Patent Office and they say, this invention here, it's new, it's novel, and it's different, and we deserve a patent for it. And the U.S. Patent Office gives them the patent. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either the new product is different and deserving of a patent, in which it should get a patent, but then it should be labeled, or else it is substantially equivalent, which does not qualify under U.S. patent law to receive a patent. They can't get it both ways, but because of their political influence on the federal government, they do get it both ways. And that is part of what our lawsuit is about, because the means for us to prove that we deserve protection under the Declaratory Judgment Act that we are challenging the validity of the patents that have been issued by the U.S. Patent Office.
Bravo.
And we look forward to the day that we will be in court and be able to present our case, because we have a strong case behind us, and we feel that Monsanto's patents on their transgenic seed are invalid and should never have been issued to them, and we're prepared to prove that in court.
So Jim, have you been in court at all? Jim, have you been in court at all?
Dave, yes.
Have we been? We've been at court with pre-trial motions only. We have not yet had the opportunity to present our case in court.
If you don't want me to talk at all, I'll leave.
No, we just have a
I just want to be clear about that.
You got to be fair too on the time.
I'm trying.
Other people
I mean,
have
you spend his whole life on this.
Some people are watching right now, and they have asked some questions. I also want to just go ahead and talk about the history. Europe has had their GMO issues coming in a little bit sooner than we have, and let's look at what the results are of that. And current investigations have focused on the potential detriment effect on beneficial insects or a faster induction of resistant insects. And so they have not found that it's cheaper, increased shelf life, or has better taste in Europe. And they've been doing this quite a bit longer than we have. So I'm going to go straight to the tweet. And this is at ToutSocial. We have an obesity problem where the blame should not be put on the food, but ones allowing the feeding. And that's from the anonymous wino. And thank you for logging in. The second Twitter, and I'll let you address it as you see fit. It is not in the U.S. population's interest to support biotech, especially in food, growing population and water restriction, etc.
It's not in our best interest to support biotech because they feel like it doesn't. What?
That was the tweet.
It's interesting. The interest is like, I still feel like we've got a world population. Look, we can talk about it or deny it. I mean, we still have a population to feed. That part's not going away. I think what we're trying to get to is why can't we take a company like this that has so much power and so much information? Why can't they just do it in a beneficial manner? Why are we spending $8 million to tell people, like, Jim, here, this is a great question. Jim, does the word organic actually mean anything anymore? Or has it been lobbied so hard to the point that biodynamics almost becomes the new organics because you can fake organics, but you can't fake biodynamics? Like, where does the word actually lose its meaning?
Well, there are biodynamic farmers in Europe that are biodynamic farmers not because they believe or practice biodynamics, but because they get a premium on their product. So, there can be farmers that, head into different areas based on the market price. That's just human nature, I guess. But, in the United States, we don't, we have the USDA National Organic Program. Our farm has been certified for 31 years, certified organic for 31 years by the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. Beginning in October of 2002, MOFGA, our certifier, became accredited to the USDA NOP program. But, so the fact is we've been certified for 10 years under USDA, but we were certified for the previous 20 years under a system that was at least as good as the USDA system, so we have experience with both.
Nice.
The USDA NOP system is not perfect, but it is a good system. If someone is certified to the USDA National Organic Programs, given the various elements in it that maintain integrity, I think that it is largely a program that is deserving of trust. Our family, the food that we don't raise ourselves, we do buy, and we try to make it certified organic because we have that faith in it, and we've been part of that system from the beginning. So I do believe that organic still does have meaning.
I was going to say, that to me is a bold statement. That's a very strong statement, Jim. I mean, we're talking about the same government that's allowing Monsanto to have it both ways is the same group of people that are now giving you the faith in the USD organic label.
Well, let me explain how the system works. Private independent certifiers like the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, the oldest organization of its type in the United States. It's been around over 40 years. They are accredited by the USDA and given the authority to provide certification. So my interaction as an organic farmer, and there's 400 of us in the state of Maine that are certified by MOFGA, we interact with Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. It is MOFGA that has to interact with the USDA. MOFGA comes up with an annual program manual that we read, and these describe the requirements for certification. They tell us what materials are allowed, what materials are not allowed. So it's a system. We have faith in MOFGA because, you know, we've been members of MOFGA for almost 40 years, and that's who we interact with. In California, you have CCOF, California Certified Organic Farmers. They are the California rendition of MOFGA. They are accredited by USDA, and these are good people that are within CCOF. They're good people within MOFGA that have integrity, and they buy organic food themselves, and they want to make sure the system is working good. So this is not a certification by the federal government. It is certification by private certifiers that are credentialed by the federal government. Then that's a big difference.
Bravo.
So actually, thank you, Jim. Wow. We're going to go around the table very quickly and try to give a 10-second. What is your wrap-up? What is your final thought, or what is your final question to Jim?
I can do it in 10 seconds. Seriously, it's easy. Just tell me what it is, tell me what it's made out of, and let me make up my own mind. That's all I'm asking for. The rest will work itself out in our free market economy, but just give me the truth.
Yeah.
I'll work it out from there as my own individual.
I'm a big believer, Jim. I hope you're successful in your endeavor in fighting the behemoth that you see before you, and fighting it, traveling at that windmill. I'm concerned about labeling because the standards here in the United States, we had a zero tolerance standard here, which is untenable. If you're a guy making Cliff Bars and trying to do your best to make something healthy, and you have to account for everything within that chain, it just becomes untenable. But I do hope
we have a bill here in the Maine legislature. We had our first public hearing on Tuesday of this week. It's called LD 718. It's a bill that Maine Organic Farmers has been working on all winter. We have, out of 186 legislators in our legislature, we have 123 co-sponsors. A recent scientific poll indicated that 91% of Mainers favor GMO labeling, and this is a simple transparency bill. It doesn't make a judgment whether GMOs are good or bad, but it simply gives people the information that whether the food is GMO or not. It is not a burden upon farmers. We've created a good design so that farmers can carry out their work of farming and have a minimal amount of burden placed on them, and consumers get their right to know. Transparency is necessary in a democracy, and GMO labeling is going to be one of the things which we will be getting. It was denied Californians because of the lies from Monsanto and their opponents, but there are states like
Jim,
that are going to pass this bill.
I'm asking a question with regard to his question or his answer. Hey, Jim, the legislation there in Vermont and New Hampshire, is it zero tolerance labeling, the same format as the California Proposition 37, or is it less restrictive?
I'm not certain about Vermont. In the Connecticut bill and in the Maine bill, there is an allowance for 0.9% content, which is the European standard. We have modeled our bills after the laws that are in effect in 62 countries in the world, representing over half of the world's population. That's what we're trying to achieve in this country, to come up to that standard that the other 62 countries have had.
And
that does allow the 0.9% content.
And that's why you didn't vote for Prop 37.
Absolutely.
So if we did that, you would vote for it.
Well, listen. I have kids. I have people that I love. I want to know what
You're
exactly.
You're a gardener. You have chickens.
But I don't want to saddle the farmer and the small business person with bureaucracy, and that's what the Proposition 37 was.
Well, I think as Dave Murphy indicated on this call earlier, a lot of what you're repeating are propaganda that Monsanto put out, disinformation.
No,
I know for a fact
I'm
that
trying
at
to
our
agree
bill
with you, Jim,
in Maine,
the European standard is more
because
realistic.
they know that it's going to be good for Maine and it's not going to be a burden on farmers. So we have tremendous support of farmers. In fact, I'm in the local chapter of the Farm Bureau in Aroostook County, and our chapter's board of directors voted 2 weeks ago to endorse LD 718. They know.
Hey, God bless you, Jim. But I'll tell you what, on a bigger scale, you guys don't produce anything in relation to what California produces. 75% of all the organic stuff released available in our country.
Well, the state of Maine has the second highest number of organic farmers as a percent of farm population to conventional farmers. The only state that has a higher percent of organic farmers than Maine is Vermont. So,
percentage.
We may be,
I'm talking about percentage, yeah.
But we are trying to feed our own population local food, and our populations do want organic food.
Yeah. So, you know what? Dave.
Did Hunter get his 10 seconds?
Dave, Hunter, Chris, you know what we're going to do? Let's do this again.
Are you kidding me?
Jim, will you come back and do this again with us sometime?
Yeah.
Hunter, do you have a final thought?
Jim, thank you so much for being here. It's a real honor and a pleasure, and I appreciate what you're doing. I guess the last question I would have is if 70, 80, 90% of Americans want this and they're fighting against Monsanto, how do we get it heard if we have a corporate and a political structure that doesn't want it heard? What are your thoughts? I mean, how do we get people to talk?
This is the same situation that in September of 2011 led to the Occupy movement getting its start. This is a democracy. People have to take control. They have to get off the couch, and they have to act like they're interested, educate themselves, and not let the 1% control all of the agenda and all of the decision-making. The fact is the 99% need to hold together and to resist. Our common bounds, our common interests are much greater and much stronger than that of the 1%, but we do have to resist that, and that means educating ourselves and being active and engaging in the political process to regain our democracy. We have a democracy that is threatened, and it's our job to bring it back so that our kids have a system that we can look forward to. And the extrapolating out the direction that we're going in now, it's untenable. We do have to change it. Creating, as Dave Murphy said, creating GMO labeling laws is the first step in true food democracy, so people have the information they need to make the decisions they need for their families.
Bravo, Jim.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Jim.
And let's definitely do this again, because I think it's an ongoing conversation.
I agree. Jim, we'd love to have you actually come back on the show. I know you've got an imminent decision coming, so let's start booking a follow-up show, and let's talk about the decision when it finally comes down and what the next step for you is going to be.
Okay, we'll be around.
We love it.
Be happy to.
Awesome.
So thank you, Jim, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Christopher Lund, David Bridges, Hunter Boone. I'm Susan Quinn, and I just want to also thank Toomey Wine Cellars, who has provided the Pinot Noir from Sonoma Coast 2011 that we have finished.
Fabulous wine.
Done.
We vote with our palates here at ToutSuite, so an empty bottle is a big winner here.
And we're live from ToutSuite, 5 o'clock somewhere in Napa Valley, and thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Jim. This is not enough. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. We need to do it again.
Okay,
and
sounds good.
Dave Murphy also, of course.
Thanks to Dave Murphy.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks so much.
Good night.
California produces 62% of all the organic stuff grown in the United States.
Yes.